Chapter 14. A Casualty. Now to finish this dirty job, I cried merrily as we got busy the next morning. We had many tubs of blubber to boil, dipping off the oil and storing it in the whale intestine containers. It took all our combined effort to store these in the cellar, as my sons called our roughest storeroom. It was a great relief to finish this smelly task. I think Elizabeth hated it most, but she showed her usual tact and good temper. In her words, if you built an outpost on that island where you found the whale, you could leave animals there. It would almost be a fine place to boil whale blubber. The boys loved the idea and wanted to begin right away. After today's work, you want to build right next to a rotting whale carcass? I said with a smile. Birds and insects will help us clean that up, said Ernst. Let's wait. His brothers agreed, and we put off the outpost on Whale Island for a while. We put our energy into repairing the damage the storms of the rainy season had done to our farms. A few weeks later, after much hard work, I felt it was time for my family to have an outing. One evening at dinner, I proposed, "It is time to begin our outpost on Whale Island. Let's take the pinnace and go to Prospect Hill tomorrow by way of Cape Disappointment. We can have our lunch there and gather sugarcane shoots, which we can plant on Whale Island." All agreed enthusiastically, and we spent the evening preparing for an all-day trip. After breakfast the next morning, we set out across the bay. The weather was calm, and everyone enjoyed the beautiful coastal scenery. We moored the pinnace near Prospect Hill and walked through the wood to our little farm, collecting some coconuts and young shrubs to begin our plantation on Whale Island. I heard the roosters crow before we came in sight of the cottage, and I felt a sudden rush of homesickness. At home, this sound would have announced our approach to a friend's house. It would have meant warm welcomes, comfortable seats, something to drink, and good company. Here, except for the animals, there was utter solitude. I loved my family, but I missed other people. No sooner had my animals reminded me of my loneliness than they distracted me from it. The original sheep, goats, and chickens had forgotten us. Their young had never seen a human. They all reacted by crowing, bleating, and scattering in every direction, as though we were wolves. It took some time and all our combined efforts to get them all rounded up and the goats milked. My sons had persuaded their mother to cook a piece of whale tongue to bring along. What a surprise they got at lunchtime. One by one they tried it and proclaimed it horrid. My foresighted wife had brought along pickled herring as well, and the boys clamored for this to kill the taste. They gave the supposed delicacy to Fangs, a far less picky eater. The fresh, delicious coconuts and goat's milk soon put everyone in a better mood. After lunch, Fritz and I gathered some sugarcane shoots to plant on Whale Island. Once we were back in the pinnace, I would have liked to explore beyond Cape Disappointment, but the cape ended in a long sandbank dotted with reefs and bleakers well out to sea. I couldn't risk the pinnace, much less my loved ones, so we caught a light breeze for Whale Island. At first the boys helped plant sugarcane, but they soon tired of this and wandered off in search of shells and coral, leaving their mother and me to finish the work. They had worked hard enough lately that I didn't mind. Presently Jack came back shouting, "Father, Mother, come look, there's a huge skeleton, a mammoth, I think." "Why, Jack," I replied laughing, "have you already forgotten our whale? What else could it be?" "It's not the whale, Father," he answered. "There's animal bones. The whale must have floated out to sea. This is much bigger. Come see." As I was about to follow, Fritz's voice called from another direction, "Father, a great big turtle, hurry, he's trying to get back to sea." Jack's skeleton, whatever it was, would wait. I grabbed an oar and hurried over. It was indeed a huge turtle, 8 feet long, scrambling quickly toward the water despite Ernst's grip on one of its hind legs. I sprang down the back and levered the turtle onto its back with Fritz's help. He would keep while we investigated Jack's mammoth skeleton. There could be only one conclusion. "It's the whale, Jack," I said. "It can't be. Those aren't fish bones," he protested. Then explain these human shoe prints just like ours," I suggested. "Where do you get the notion about a mammoth?" From Ernst, father. He told me there was a monster skeleton, so I ran to look closer. I saw no fish bones, so I didn't think of the whale. I guess he was joking. Whales aren't fish, I explained. They nurse their young like all mammals. Their hollow bones help them float, just as the hollow bones of birds enable them to fly. You can see God's wisdom in every living creature. And his generosity, added Fritz. Surely we can get some use from these bones. Let's leave them here to bleach for a while. Maybe we can make furniture from them someday. Right now, let's bring the boat around and figure out how to handle the turtle. It was obvious that the large reptile would have to swim. I tied one end of a long rope around its neck and forepaws, then tied a big empty barrel near this as a float. We fastened the other end to the pinnace bow and heaved the turtle right side up. He made for the water and tried to dive, but the barrel prevented him. Then he began to swim hard for the open sea. Hurry, everyone on board, I ordered. We all hastened into the pinnace, and the helpful turtle began to tow us toward the mainland. I was ready to cut the line at any sign of danger, but I learned to steer him. If I splashed on one side of him with a boat hook, he swam the other way. You're like Neptune in this cart, father, pulled by dolphins, Jack exclaimed. Let's hope I'm not a pagan god, I laughed as we landed safely near Rockburg. Putting the turtle to death wasn't a kind reward for its hard work, so I made sure it was done with one clean stroke. The immense shell would make a fine water trough, and we saved and salted the meat. The expedition had been a great success. I wanted to increase our farmland before the next rainy season, but I found it was difficult to train our animals to the yoke, so I gave up for the moment. Instead, I applied myself to improving my wife's loom, in which Ernst had noted some minor flaws. Fortunately, in my youth, I had spent many hours in the workshops of weavers and other artisans, and Ernst and I tinkered with the loom until we got it right. While Elizabeth took advantage of the modified loom, I set the rest of us to harness making. We had plenty of leather and wood and moss, so I had all my sons make saddles, stirrups, bridles, yokes, and collars for each mount. These proved most helpful, and it was good that each boy prepared his own animal's equipment. Before long, the herring bank returned, followed by many other fish and seals. The work was far easier this time. The boys were a year older and all knew what to expect. After we had laid in a large supply, the boys wanted to go on a hunting trip, but I felt basket making was more important. Our sacks were beginning to wear out, and we needed ways to carry crops and food. When we had a fine supply of baskets, I had my sons make a very large one with openings for a strong stick. With one person on each end, we could carry a great deal. My sons got an idea. Hoisting little Franz into the basket, they carried the delighted child around for a while. Then Fritz suggested, Father, couldn't we make something like this for Mother? She would be a lot more comfortable. The cart jolts her around a lot. His brothers cheered the idea, but Elizabeth was skeptical. I'd be sitting in the middle and peeking out over the edge now and then, she objected. I'd feel isolated. We could make a comfortable chair in a litter, I reassured her, but how would we carry it? You boys would get tired of it, and what if you stumbled? The bull and the buffalo, cried Jack. Let's try them. The boys ran off, and in a short time the basket hung securely between Storm and Grumble. Fritz and Jack sprang into their saddles, and Ernst very gingerly climbed into the cradle, as Franz called it. They set out at a sober pace. The animals were cooperative, if a bit surprised. Mother, this is fun, cried Ernst as they passed us. It rocks gently. Quicker, Fritz. The riders spurred their animals into a trot, which pleased Ernst equally, until I saw Jack and Fritz exchange looks and the crack riding crops. Their mounts took off at a full gallop, jolting the basket around fearfully. Ernst began to protest. Slow down, this is too fast. Stop this thing. Let me off. His brothers, in no hurry to heed his protest, did a full lap around the level ground near Rockburg. They finally pulled up in front of us like performers awaiting applause. Elizabeth and I couldn't help laughing, but Ernst wasn't amused. I asked you to stop, he complained. I felt like the rocks were put inside a calabash. We put inside a calabash. You asked us to speed up, and we did. Fritz said hotly. Stop crying about it. What's the matter? Asked Jack, not kindly. Was the professor scared? I could see tempers rising on all sides and felt bound to step in. All of you be quiet, I said in tones of command. See how easily a joke can go too far, in case any of you have somehow forgotten. You're stuck here with no one to depend on you but your family. You can't afford a quarrel. We all need each other. Fritz looked uncomfortable. I'm sorry, Ernst. It was meant in fun. And I'm sorry for making fun of you too, added Jack. Ernst broke into a smile. I forgive you both, he said. To show it, I'll help you unharness the animals. Let's give them some salt and grain as a reward, and practice this litter carrying another day. So good fellowship was restored. Not long after that, I was working on a basket with my wife and Fritz on the porch. Fritz suddenly got up and took a few steps toward Jackal River, looked, then exclaimed, Father, I see something very strange coming toward the bridge. First, it seems to be coiled up on the ground. Then it rises up, then sinks, and then coils move again. What could it be? Alarmed, Elizabeth hastened to herd the younger boys into Rockburg. I told them to close the entrance and stand watch with loaded guns at the upper windows. I was glad we had made these windows, for they made the cave a strong fighting position. Fritz remained with me while I examined the object with my spyglass. It's a huge snake, just as I suspected, I exclaimed. It's coming, and it's sure to cross the bridge. This will be very dangerous. Can we attack it, Father? Exclaimed the brave boy. With great care, I answered. They're very hard to kill, very strong, and most dangerous when wounded and angry. Thank God we're at Rockburg, where we can retreat to safety and watch for a chance to destroy it. Go inside and supervise the defense. I'll join you after I get a sense of the monster's movements. Fritz left me unwillingly while I continued to watch the immense snake. It was already too close to Family Bridge for anyone to block its path by lifting the span, and it could easily break Rockburg's windows if it wanted to enter. From time to time, its head reared up to 15 to 20 feet high, as if hunting. When it crossed the bridge, I withdrew to Rockburg and joined the garrison, much to everyone's relief. After we had barricaded the lower windows, we took up positions at the higher ones. Even my wife pointed a weapon. The snake soon approached Rockburg's front door. It hesitated, sticking out its long tongue as if to try to puzzle out an unfamiliar smell. Unable to resist, Jack fired a shot into the monster, followed immediately by Franz, Ernst, and Elizabeth. The barrage seemed only to startle the snake, so Fritz and I fired with steadier aim, but equal lack of effect. The great snake hurried along into the reedy marsh to our left, then out of view. It felt as if a weight had been lifted from our hearts, at least for the moment. That was a boa constrictor, at least 30 feet long, large even for its kind, I explained. It crushes its prey in its coils, then swallows it whole. Neither a boy nor an adult would be a difficult meal for it. No one is to go outside for any reason without my express permission. We spent 3 full days in suspense, not daring to go more than a few hundred steps from the door. The boa showed no sign of returning. Maybe it's gone someplace else after we scared it, suggested Franz. I doubt it, answered my wife. See how odd and restless the geese and ducks are acting? I suspect he's still in their swamp. Eventually, they grew so disturbed they took flight for Shark Island. What would we do? We didn't have the force to defeat it. But we couldn't exist this way forever. In the end, we were delivered from it not by bravery and cleverness, but by sheer stupidity. We didn't have a large supply of animal fodder. Late in the 3rd day, we ran out of hay. I planned to send Fritz on a mission to herd the animals to the grazing area across the river. He would ride Lightfoot, keep the animals fastened together until they crossed, then disable the bridge. The next morning, as we were tying the animals into a line, my wife opened the door. Old Grizzle, frolicsome after his long rest and regular feeding, broke away. After some awkward capering, he took off at a joyful gallop. He was headed straight for the marsh. We all called his name, but in vain. Fritz would have rushed after him, but I held him back. We could only watch in horror as the snake rose from its lair, glanced around, opened its dark, deadly jaws, and darted forth a greedy, forked tongue. Only then did Grizzle realize his peril, and he splayed his legs and began the most piteous, anguishing bray ever to echo from a cliffside. Swift and straight as a fencer's thrust, the boa was upon him. The great snake wound all around Grizzle, cunningly avoiding the donkey's agonizing kicks. To my family's urgent appeals to shoot it, I could only tell the sad truth. It's impossible, I'm afraid. Our old friend is lost to us. However, when the boa is full, its turn may come. Surely it isn't going to swallow Grizzle whole, Father. That's awful. That's all it can do, I explained. Snakes can't chew. They have no teeth. It's horrible, but no worse than lions and tigers tearing up their prey in a bloody mess. But, said Franz, how can the snake separate the flesh from the bones without teeth? And is it poisonous? Not poisonous, I said, just strong and fierce. It can digest bones, skin, hair, and all after it has crushed them. It seems impossible, exclaimed Fritz. I can't imagine Grizzle fitting into that mouth. The boa will crush him first, I explained. Elizabeth, this might be a good time for you and Franz to find something to do inside. They needed no persuasion and hastened into the cave. The rest of us bided our time in fearful fascination as the boa worked over its prey, a process that took from 7 in the morning to noon. Finally, the boa lay stiff and distorted along the edge of the marsh. Now or never, I commanded. Be brave, but be sensible. Follow me. I led my sons from Rockburg with a new exhilaration I had never known before, approaching the snake with leveled guns and rapid steps. Fritz followed me closely. Jack followed more timidly. Ernst hesitated, then stayed put. The monster's body was motionless, which made its fiery eyes and slow twitches of its tail more fearful by contrast. Fritz and I advanced to point-blank range. When I halted, so did he. We raised our guns. My son and I fired together, and both bullets entered the skull. The light went out of the monster's eyes, and the snake's body thrashed and writhed. Advancing carefully, we fired our pistols directly into its head. A convulsive quiver ran through the mighty frame, and the boa constrictor lay dead. As we raised a cry of victory, Jack made his move for glory. He ran close to the creature and fired a pistol into its side. The immense jerking tail jerked and bowled the boy over. Unhurt, Jack got to his feet. I finished it off, he cheered. My wife approached, holding Franz tightly by the hand. I hope those were the sounds of victory, she said. They were. Let's thank God we succeeded, I said meaningfully, looking around. Fritz knelt, followed by the rest, and I led my family in prayer. Afterwards, Jack asked, What do we do with him now? Stuff him and put him in the museum, said Fritz. We agreed to this plan. My wife went to make lunch while we rested in the shade near the snake. It was pleasant to be outdoors, and we couldn't leave the snake's carcass unless we wanted it damaged by birds of prey. We discussed snakes, snake poison, and the snake charmers of India. What should we do in case of snake bite? Asked Fritz. It varies depending on the snake, I answered, and we probably don't have any of the remedies here. So be careful not to get bitten. But Ernst, I added, how shall we remember our poor friend the donkey? He deserves better burial, for he was faithful if unwise. Ernst thought a moment. Let's bury him near here, not in the swamp, of course, and place a board as his tombstone. We can burn his name onto the board, and he stopped to think a bit longer. Yes, those words. Here lies our faithful donkey Grizzle, whose tragic death saved our lives. Very good, Ernst. Perfect epitaph, I said, and the others agreed. Fritz brought a scrap of lumber. Ernst heated a poker, originally meant for a colonial fireplace, and marked the board with the words. After lunch, we got to work on the snake. First, we recovered the mangled remains of Grizzle, whom we buried in a quiet ceremony. Then we yoked Storm and Grumble to drag the boa's corpse near Rockburg. Skinning, stuffing, and sewing took 3 days. We coiled it around the pole in the museum, arranging the head with jaws wide open, and making realistic-looking replacement eyes and a long tongue. Our taxidermy was skillful enough that our dogs growled each time they passed the monster. They must have wondered at our sense in keeping such a pet.